Chapter 16. Jack Johnson versus Tarzan. The fighting between Du Bois and Washington was nothing compared with the actual boxing that gripped the entire nation. Black people used black fighters as a way to symbolically beat on white America's racism. White people used white fighters to prove superiority over black people in the ring and therefore in the world. No boxer broke the backs of white people and puffed up the chests of black people like Jack Johnson. He was the most famous black man in America, and the most hated, because he was the best. He'd beaten the brakes off every white boxer, and in December 1908, he finally got a shot at the heavyweight title. His opponent? Tommy Burns. The fight took place in Australia, and well, let's just say Jack left Tommy down under. I know, a bad joke, a dad joke, a bad dad joke, but still, a fact. For racists, athletes and entertainers could be spun into narratives of the black aggressor, the natural dancer, etc. Like the reason black people were good wasn't because of practice and hard work, but because they were born with it. Note, black assimilationists have also made this argument, which is racist. It gave white people a way to explain away their own failures. Their competitive losses also gave them justification to find ways to cheat inside the arena or outside. For black people, however, sports and entertainment were, and still are, a way to step into the shoes of the big timer. It was a way to use the athlete or the entertainer, Johnson being both, as an avatar, as a representative of the entire race, like human teleportation machines zapping black people, especially poor black people, from powerlessness to possibility. So if Johnson arrived on the scene dressed in fancy clothes, hands adorned with diamonds, all black people were psychologically dressed to the nines, at least for a while. If Johnson talked slick to white men, saying whatever he wanted, all black people got away with a verbal jab or two in their minds. And most important, if Johnson knocked out a white man, guess what? All black people knocked out a white man, and white people couldn't have that. Immediately, white people started to cry out for a great white hope to beat Johnson. That hope was a retired heavyweight champion, James J. Jeffries. Retired. Their hope was someone who had already quit the sport. Really, I mean, come on. No need to build suspense. You know what happened. Jeffries lost too, and though this was a big deal, especially for white people, it was everything else about Jack Johnson, not just his fighting, that set off alarms in the racist world. 1, his ego. Jack Johnson was a champ who acted like a champ. Fur coats and diamonds, an early god of flash. And 2, the biggest spike in the heart of white America. Jack Johnson's wife was white. Cue the dramatic organ or the gunshots or the thunder crack or the hissing cat or... Johnson had too much power. Power to defeat white men, power to be with white women. And just like with the Haitian Revolution, white people were afraid all black men would feel just as powerful, and that was a no-go. So they figured out a way to get rid of Jack Johnson, to stop him. They arrested him on trumped-up charges for trafficking a prostitute, or rather a white woman, across state lines. He ran, spent 7 years out of the country before turning himself in and doing a year in jail. But the end of Jack Johnson still wasn't enough to make white men feel good about themselves, so a man named Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote a book to reinforce the idea of white supremacy and to remind white men that Africans, black people, were savages. It was called Tarzan of the Apes. Here's the basic plot of the book series. 1. A white child named John Clayton is orphaned in Central Africa. 2. John is raised by apes. 3. They change his name to Tarzan, which means white skin. 4. Tarzan becomes the best hunter and warrior, better than all the Africans. 5. Eventually, he teaches himself to read. 6. In the sequels and subsequent stories, Tarzan protects a white woman named Jane from being ravished by Africans. 7. Tarzan protects a white woman named Jane from being ravished by Africans. 8. Tarzan protects a white woman named Jane from being ravished by Africans. 9. Get it? Tarzan was bigger than Jack Johnson ever was or would be. He became a cultural phenomenon made into comic strips, movies, television shows, and even toys. I'm sure some of you have seen the movies or the old TV shows in which Tarzan does that yodel, a call of white masculinity that we've all mimicked as children. At least I did. Chapter 17. Birth of a Nation and a New Nuisance. The same year the first Tarzan novel was published, black people got tricked again by a political candidate. They helped to get the Democrat Woodrow Wilson elected. Now it seems like a good time to address the whole Republican-Democrat thing. At this point in history, the Democrats dominated the South. They were opposed to the expansion of civil rights and anything that had to do with far-reaching federal power, like railroads, settling the West with homesteaders and not slave owners, even state university systems. Today, we'd say they were against big government. Republicans at this time dominated the North. They were for civil rights, at least politically, and wanted expansion and railroads and even a state university system. I know, it feels like I got the descriptions mixed up, like we're living in a backward land. Maybe we are. Anyway, back to Woodrow Wilson. He was a Democrat, and during his first term, he let black people know what he thought about them by enjoying the first ever film screening in the White House of Hollywood's first blockbuster film, D.W. Griffith's The Birth of a Nation. The film was based on a book called The Klansman. Can you guess what this movie was about? Here's the basic plot. 1. A black man, played by a white man in blackface, tries to rape a white woman. 2. She jumps off a cliff and kills herself. 3. Klansmen avenge her death. 4. The end. The beginning of a new outrage. I want to be clear here. Rape isn't something to be taken lightly or to be turned back on the victim as a sharp blade of blame. But during this time, allegations of rape were often used as an excuse to lynch black men, rooted in the stereotype of the savagery of the black man and the preciousness the white woman. Black people protested the movie. The intellects like Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois fought in their intellectual ways, writing. But Southern black activists did much more. They protested with their feet. It was time to go. It's important to note that this was during the Great War, also known as World War I, but the Great War at home between blacks and whites had pushed blacks to the brink. Black people started to leave the South in droves. Imagine the biggest parade you've ever seen, and then multiply it by a bazillion, but it didn't look as uniform or as happy. This was a parade of progress, one of hope after severe exhaustion. Black people were tired of being lied to, tired of being told life was better after emancipation, as if Jim Crow laws hadn't made their lives miserable, as if politicians hadn't taken advantage of them, milking them for votes to gain power, only to slap black people back down, as if the media hadn't continued to push racist narratives that would put black people's lives at risk off page and off screen.